Hi everyone, Julia here, recording this on November 13th, 2022. And these are some highlights from the Archaix live broadcast on November 11th, 2022, entitled Forbidden Origin of the Tarot. Jason begins by prompting to just do it. He says, conjure up an idea and then just do it. Referencing the tarot, Jason says that it's never the method, it's always the individual. He mentions that many others support his conclusions on tarot readings. He reviews how initially all cards were just playing cards, and that the French card makers' artwork was very intricate and the most popular. He says that the French were fascinated with ancient Egypt. And when Castor of Haarlem made the first printing press, which was stolen by Gutenberg, playing cards became more popular, and that the original suits were wands, cups, swords, and coins, also known as pentacles. He points out that cards took forever to produce before the advent of the printing press. Jason cites that the first mention of playing cards was in 1377 AD, and that there was no report of their use for divination until centuries later. He reports that it was the 17th century when cards were first referenced as being used for divination. He says that the Germans changed their decks suits into heart, club, spade, and diamond, and that those in Italy and Portugal were predecessors to tarot. He says that working class mocked card playing because it was a waste of time, and that only the elite could afford the cards and time to play when the cards weren't being mass produced. Jason teaches that in 1751, cartomancy became a thing. He mentions that the number of cards in the deck went up to 78 when the 22 Arcana cards were added. He says that no one knows who designed and added the 22 Arcana cards in 1787 through 1789 AD. He states that the Book of Thoth is myth, and that it's not actually a book but random fragments of translations of hieroglyphs. He goes on to say that the Bible, the Book of Thoth, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is really the Book of Life, are all fragments of translations from all over Egypt. He shares that he thought the Bible was the Word of God, but that his studies revealed that it's just a collection, that it isn't just a collection of books, but bits of fragments from ancient writings found in all forms all over Egypt. He argues that referencing as far back as 35,000 BC is BS, and that the author of the Book of Thoth didn't understand calendric systems and counted days as years. He points out that Atlantis and Greece didn't exist at the same time in history. He says that Aleister Crowley couldn't find mysterious origins, so he created them. He goes on to point out that the Book of Thoth has no evidence of existence because historical writers don't mention it in bibliographies. He suggests that the secret to Thoth is a calendar code stating that the mention of the number 36,525 refers to the 365.25 days in a year, and these calendar codes are on ancient manuscripts and monuments everywhere. He concludes that the Book of Thoth was made up in modern times. Jason claims that prolific writers of the past didn't know anything about tarot or cartomancy. Jason teaches that if you're interested, that if you've invested a piece of your soul into believing in the process, then the simulacrum will reciprocate, and that's how all divination and magic works. He suggests that a tarot reading has everything to do with the person doing the reading, and that the person having the reading doesn't need to believe. He goes on to point out that there are lots of subjectivity when it comes to tarot, hence a great capacity for corruption, like telling people what they want to hear. He reminds that it's never the method, it's always the individual. He warns that the tarot can be a great tool of deception and says that he's ambiguous about it. He stresses that it's definitely a recent invention, but that's not important, and that all occult systems are made up by people at some point in history. He says that it doesn't matter when something is brought into the collective. He goes on to how many of the symbols in tarot come from the Kabbalah, which comes from the Torah. He says that there's lots of Jewish impregnation into all Western systems, and that they funded the printing press, being the first publishers, still owning the media and all entertainment entities, along with owning 90% of world banks today. He again points out how Graham Hancock and others read the same material as he did, but misdated on purpose to help promote uniformitarian theory of taking billions of years for evolution to create modern humans. He references why roaches, dragonflies, worms, etc. are still the same. He postulates that if one species evolved, then all should evolve, and says that the Smithsonian destroyed and hid artifacts to hide our true history. He speculates that SRI, the Stanford Research Institute, MK Ultras, its clients who are often celebrities, and that's been going on for years. Jason claims that all occult systems are the same, and that it's never the method, it's always the individual. He recommends the book Liber Chaos by Peter Carroll to sum up how it all works. Jason says that the information contained everywhere, including your informed field, and that if you sit in the dark, not thinking, that you can sink in to a thought field, interfacing directly with Source. He points out that we do it all the time when we're zoned out driving. He touches on how we're advanced in the past, and the past reported magic is often ancient technology. Jason stresses that there is no evidence of going into space, and that if we have communication satellites, then why are there relay towers everywhere? He says that there are only halo balloons at very low elevations or altitudes. He goes on to say how the stones of the Great Pyramid represent the souls of man, and that it's a symbol of the tree of life. He refers to all the patterns in multiples of 138 with pi and phi. He claims that the Great Pyramid was built to bring the holography down in the year 2178, with 2178 being the only number that forms a loop when analyzed through the paradigm of a hologram. He says that the Great Pyramid needs to be activated during vapor canopy conditions, and that he's not sure how, and that he hopes that greater minds will figure out how and when. Jason teaches that the chief cornerstone is the one who returns to set the captives free, and that this person will potentially activate the monument that he built years ago. He asserts that the Great Pyramid was built to survive cataclysms, and that it's mentioned by many ancient cultures. He points out how many teachings are literal as well as symbolic, like the Great Pyramid. Jason stresses that the apocalypse will need to happen before the return of the chief cornerstone. He discusses how the Anuna came as benefactors on ships from the sea, that they were a transplant race who escaped destruction. He says that they integrated with local Neolithic Sumerians and were regarded as fathers and gods. Jason tells how the Anuna were humans similar to us, and says that there are two races of humans. Jason says that the Freemasons and other similar organizations were infiltrated by the Jews, forming secret pacts. He says that throughout history, they have instigated and financed both sides of wars. He ends by saying that Jewish history is not well received. So thanks for listening, and I hope you have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. And please share this and subscribe. And remember to always focus on what you want and help others if you can. Ciao, ciao.